Story 1. It was a text from my mom. Hi Taco Bell, are you working from home or the office today? That wasn't all that unusual, but what was unusual was the fact that about 2 minutes later my younger sister called me. It was a Monday at about 10 a.m. I was at work, and she was at work. As soon as I saw the call, I knew something had happened. My younger sister was calling to tell me that our dad had unexpectedly died that morning. My mom was trying to find out if I was at home or in the office to know how she should proceed with that news. A year later, I still get anxious when someone calls or texts me at an unusual time. Story 2. I love you and will be back before you know it. My husband, who was deployed and killed in a friendly fire incident by a United States Marine, he was British, passed away 21 years ago. I still miss my best friend and soulmate of 17 years. Story 3. 2 police officers arrived at my front door early in the morning after the teenagers and my husband had left for school and work. They asked if they could come in to talk with me. I was scared to my core. The news was that my brother, who lived in a different state, had passed away the night before. I was listed as his emergency contact. I am serious when I say I almost fainted, not knowing what news was coming. I could tell from their expressions that they had bad news and didn't want to be there. It was a few days before Thanksgiving. I had to fly to my mother's house that day to tell her in person, and then witness the most gut-wrenching scream from her when she heard the news. My father had passed away the year before. My mother was in her 70s, and from that moment on, I basically took over her caregiving. It was as if she had given up for a while. I understand. Children are not supposed to pass away before their parents. But I am exhausted after 11 years of caregiving, and I miss my brother. Story 4. Well, honey, there is a lot of hate in the world. My mother, when I told her I didn't think she hated me, said that she never felt loved by her either. Story 5. You're young, so I wouldn't worry too much. Cervical cancer is very rare in people your age, but if it eases your mind, we can send out the biopsy. I was 25 when it progressed from stage 2 to stage 3. I lost my fertility, but I saved my life. Get cervical cancer screenings and push for them if necessary. It's not so rare that you can say it has never happened to anyone you know, because now you know me. Story 6. She will be home soon. You can come inside and wait for her so you can play together. This was told to me by my friend's father, who was also my brother's baseball coach, someone I should have been able to trust, just before he harmed me. Story 7. It was the summer after 5th grade. My parents had separated about 2 years before, and I was at my dad's house. He didn't like how I was writing my book report, so he started to hit me, which was typical. The violence this time was not. After he was done and had his fill, he went outside to chop wood. Terrified that he would harm me with the axe, I called my mom. Who wouldn't? Sobbing, I begged her to come get me. She did and confronted my dad. We drove back to her house and were sitting around the table eating dinner with my siblings. She leaned in towards me, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm not going to save you like that ever again," in the coldest way possible, as if I had done her a disservice. And she wonders why I left home at 18. Story 8. These comments truly make you reflect and realize that many people are experiencing significant challenges in their lives. From the bottom of my heart, I wish you all well and hope for success and happiness beyond your wildest dreams. Story 9. Got a burnt one up top. The pizza cook said after he placed a half-burnt pizza on top of the oven, where it became fair game for employees. It was my turn for the next delivery, but I let my coworker take it and stayed for a bite. I left with the next delivery, and a few minutes later, an 81-year-old lady ran a red light on the highway and changed my life forever. I couldn't walk for a year. My college diploma, which I had just received 2 months prior, was now useless as it required some physical work. Sports were gone. My overall attitude and life trajectory were completely altered. All because I wanted a free slice of pizza. Story 10. I'm going to bed early because I'm really tired. Babe, my fiancé never woke up. The cause of death was medical malpractice. He was prescribed a mixture of 3 prescription drugs that, if taken together, slows the heart down until it stops. We weren't married, so I couldn't sue, but his mother did and included his daughter in the suit. She will be secure when she turns 18. To answer a common question, I don't remember the names of the medications. It has been a long time. One was an antidepressant, one was a blood pressure medication, and one was methadone. The Veterans Affairs Department had gotten him addicted to opioids, and he was trying to get clean. The doctor at the methadone clinic prescribed the medication and adjusted the dose every day or every other day. The family didn't find out until much later that it's widely known that those three don't mix, especially at the doses he was prescribed. I want to thank everyone for their sympathy. It was 11 years ago, and I'm in a much better place mentally now than in the years immediately following his death. To everyone sharing similar stories of heartbreak, my heart goes out to you. I hope you can heal from the grief, or at least find some comfort in the life you have with your loved ones. It's a long, hard road for sure. Story 11. I will order you a separate ride. A friend was ordering rides at a party and I wanted to go with my best friend. The friend ordering said he would order mine separately because I was going a different way. He waited until everyone left. Then I experienced the worst assault of my life. Story 12. I believe we are not soulmates. This does not feel like destiny. It was not destiny, and we ended just as spectacularly as you imagine. Story 13. From my dad. It's cancer, likely pancreatic cancer, and it has spread pretty far. I'll be fine just being comfortable. There is a lot more to that, but it's the same as when my mom died. I am still numb that I will lose both parents before turning 33 to pancreatic cancer, and now I have to worry that my brother will get it too, as they are both dying at a relatively young age. Story 14. If I can't assault you verbally, I might get physical. My boyfriend of 5 years, now my ex, said this after I asked him to please stop personally insulting me during arguments. Story 15. We have never seen this before, and neither has any institution we have contacted, said the nephrology and immunology team. Little did I know I would hear this phrase well over 200 times in my life from specialists. I was laughing when I went to the emergency room because my urine was black and looked like Coca-Cola. I was 11 years old but had been mysteriously sick since I was a baby. Now I know it was a diagnosis of a new disease not recorded in medicine, and I have been studied for years. I did not realize how serious it was as a child and thought I would recover. Still, no treatments are available. A couple of years later, they really sat me down and explained that I would be dying very young and probably soon. They told my parents to say goodbye and sent me to a hospice care center, and then it clicked. Story 16. I'm sorry. We just wanted to avoid traffic. You can come home, we have a party waiting for you. My mother said this to me on my high school graduation after I spent an hour looking for my parents, only to realize that they weren't there. I walked home alone that night in tears because no one offered to come back and give me a ride. All I wanted was a simple hug and congratulations. Story 17. I'm sorry, but I have to leave early. They scheduled me to work. My ex, who left my grandfather's funeral early to cheat on me with her coworker. My grandfather was the rock of my life, the man I always looked up to. His death devastated me, and I really needed her to be there for me and help. Instead, she went and was unfaithful with her coworker, and even bragged about it after we broke up when I found out she was cheating with someone else. This ruined my perception of dating for a long time until I met my wife, who healed me. Story 18. I was in graduate school. As we entered the final leg of the program, we had a class meeting with the program director to review what the next 6 months would look like. They mentioned that many students typically begin looking for work around this time, but encouraged us to focus on completing our coursework. After all, the job market was quite favorable and not likely to change in 6 months. I chose to focus on my coursework as recommended. When I graduated, the job market had changed entirely. Many companies in my industry were laying off employees by the thousands. I was now overqualified for my previous job and too inexperienced for anything else. I ended up working at a grocery store for almost a year before I returned to my field, earning a fraction of what I used to make. It may be too early to say it ruined my life, but it has been a major setback. Story 19. So we are starting treatment for lymphoma, right? Said the emergency room doctor. I replied no because I do not have cancer. Well, my chart says you do. Story 20. No, you need to go and get your education. I asked my mother if she wanted me to watch my younger siblings and stay home from school that morning. She was killed just a few hours later. I just earned my associate degree. I will be graduating alone next month, but I did it. Story 21. Kitten. I'm okay. My parents call me Kitten because I apparently purred as a baby. I was in college living off campus in my hometown when my phone rang. It was my dad. He and my mom were at the emergency room because he had fallen off a ladder while cleaning the gutters and had a seizure. They thought he had hit his head, though he fell only about 4 feet onto a bush and grass. The seizure alarmed my mom, and they rushed to the hospital. He was diagnosed with a grade 4 glioblastoma, a terminal brain cancer, after that visit. Later, we realized the seizure probably caused the fall. These were the hardest 2 years of my life. He was the strongest, bravest person I've ever known. It's been 20 years, and I can still hear his voice on the other end of that call. Story 22. Well, you have degenerative disc disease, for herniated discs and lumbar spinal stenosis, but it shouldn't be causing you that much pain. Boom, life forever altered for the worse. Story 23. Wife said, I have a headache. I'm just going to take a bath. She slipped into a coma and died 2 days later from a brain tumor. Story 24. I swear I will stop drinking. 9 years later, and that never happened. I took our 4-year-old daughter and left. Unfortunately, he decided hitting me in front of her was a good idea after I warned him that it was the deal breaker to end everything. Sometimes I wonder if he did it on purpose. I don't care. It was the best thing to ever happen. We are better off without him in our lives. 6 blissful years of no drunkenness anymore. Good riddance. Story 25. Phone ringing incessantly at 7 in the morning. I wake up groggily and answer, Hello, Dad died. What? I respond, still half asleep. Jimmy found him this morning. The coroners are on the way if you want to see him before they take him. Instantly wide awake. I say, What? What are you talking about? I'll call you back in a minute. I proceed to call my dad's cell phone repeatedly and send him a text message. Wake up! I am not ready for this. I had gone out for drinks with my father just 2 nights before. His death was completely unexpected and blindsided everyone. He had become my best friend. I'm crying as I write this. I miss you, Dad. Story 26. There is no treatment, you just have to get on with it. After being diagnosed with chronic pain and fatigue, I have lost my job, relationships, and a significant amount of money trying to get better. They diagnosed me with a condition that they do not treat and barely believe in. Story 27. My mother said this to me when I was 7 years old. I didn't fully understand her words at the time, as I was being abused by my brother. How can a 7-year-old girl be considered promiscuous? I still struggle to comprehend how she could say something so hurtful. Story 28. Don't get upset. Don't get scared. A woman I had never seen before said this to me right before I learned I needed dialysis or a kidney transplant. She was not my doctor or nurse. Perhaps she was from Human Resources, but I don't know. She came into my hospital room, hugged me, and said those words. I then dragged the 4-pole with me to a public phone and called my father, saying, Daddy, these people are acting like I'm dying. He rushed back to me in record time. Story 29. Let's just wing it, said before a group project, a camping trip, and a haircut. All 3 ended in tears. Story 30. Hi, I need to talk to you in my office. My boss unexpectedly fired me. The government bailed out the airlines because of COVID-19, but they didn't care. Even though the taxpayers provided them with billions, they still laid off around 5,000 people. However, there is a silver lining. The CEO of American Airlines received his $10 million bonus that year, so I guess I should be happy. Story 31. Well, that's strange. The doctor couldn't figure out my seemingly random assortment of symptoms after months of back and forth. 6 months later, I found out I had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, just 2 days from dying when the emergency room nurse discovered it. It should have been treatable if caught early. Honestly, I'm lucky I can walk again, but I can't do many of the things I used to do. Story 32. You are not living up to your potential. I was 14 and have been chasing this unspecified potential to burnout ever since, for 37 years. Story 33. You just put it out of your mind and get over it. My mother passed on the cycle of abuse to me after she experienced it herself. I believed it until my daughter was born, and then the anger rose. I broke the cycle, and I sincerely hope my mother is facing the consequences of her actions. Story 34. He is gifted and should be in art school. The problem was that I was talented, but it felt like big fish, small pond. I was gifted compared to the kids in my class or even my school, but not in the wider world. Though she meant it as encouragement, it was a terrible thing to hear from a teacher. Expectation turned into self-loathing. Story 35. You're smarter than the other kids. That's what makes you special. My uncle said this to me when I was 7. Are you seriously eating again? My mom said to me after dinner. I was 11, and this was the final brick in the wall that contributed to my 20-year struggle with an eating disorder. In my early 20s, I averaged around 800 to 900 calories per day. I still hear her voice asking that in a disgusted tone when I sometimes have a snack. I think it's time you found a new place to live. My dad said this when he kicked me out at 16 for dating someone of the same sex. You're pretty cute. I think you could help me make money. A man used my homelessness as leverage to exploit me. I was allowed to sleep in his garage in exchange. Story 36. You have had a really tough life, haven't you? I had never thought of it that way, but it unsettled the security of my worldview and undermined my sense of purpose. Now, I resist the alluring pull of a victim mentality. Story 37. I don't know what I want, but I know it's not you. My girlfriend and I were dating for 8 years when she surprised me with this statement. Story 38. You are the perfect candidate for LASIK. 18 months later, I am still suffering from debilitating dry eye and inflammation as the corneal nerves are not healing properly. I have already spent thousands on medication and eye drops to manage the symptoms, with no end in sight. Story 39. I wouldn't be caught dead at a Great White concert. It wasn't actually the last thing I said, but it was the last conversation I had with my friend who invited me to a fun night out before he went to the Station nightclub on February 20th, 2003. He died when the superheated smoke destroyed his lungs while he was unconscious. He had been recording the show, and the equipment he used survived the fire enough that the Federal Bureau of Investigation was able to recover the audio. This was actually a key piece of evidence to determine what happened and how quickly it occurred. Unfortunately, this means that someone was able to understand exactly what was happening to his body in his last moments. The audio is out there. I found it by accident once on an anniversary date a while back. Survivor's guilt is a strange thing to deal with. Story 40. I woke up covered in blood, without pants but with my underwear on, and my Rottweiler laying on top of me. She never slept with me, let alone on top of me. I went into my living room and saw a menthol cigarette in an ashtray. Don't judge. I lived in a concrete loft, and my jeans jumbled at the door. I went into the bathroom and saw my shirt, face, and legs covered in dried blood. I called the friend I hung out with to see what happened, and the story made no sense. You got drunk, drove off, and no one knows what happened to you. I lived 3 blocks from the place I was at. I wouldn't drive, let alone walk to my place to drive home. I went and got my car. It was wrecked. I opened the door. There was no blood on the driver's side, but a lot of blood on the passenger side. I have driven for many years without a seatbelt on. Then the memories started coming back. I was bleeding and rolled out to my right, out of the car. The girl, wearing a fairy skirt in shades of blue, whom I couldn't remember, asked to help me. Can I call the police? You're safe. Stay with me. She sat on the ground with me, holding my face. She said she'd call the police, but the guy left. He ran, and they didn't see him. She kept her male friend away. I tried to put her number in my phone, but couldn't. Then it went black. After talking to that friend and finding his cigarette in my ashtray, I thought about the small town stories that came out. He took my car, tried to take me to his house, didn't buckle me in, hit a pole, and my face hit the dashboard. He bailed. Someone saw the commotion and came as a rescue with his car, took me home, and got me somewhat undressed before my dog intervened. Then he left and blamed me. He roofied me. He was caught about 8 years later. I told 4 people that story. All of them men close to me. 2 wanted a name. 2 said, maybe you were just too drunk. The 2 that believed me were my brother and my now husband. The other 2 were my best friends. We aren't friends anymore, and I do not trust anyone but my dog. Story 41. My doctor told me that I cannot get pregnant. An ex-girlfriend from the mid-1990s told me this after she had faked a miscarriage. Turns out she was a lesbian and just wanted a baby. She and her partner had initially chosen me based on my looks, and it went from there. I have had a pretty crazy life. Story 42. This question hits me hard now, but not at the time. My girlfriend and I were lying in bed. I was exhausted. The night seemed fine. She said, I'm not happy. I replied that I was tired, rolled over, and tried to fall asleep, thinking the next day would just be another day. It wasn't just another day after that. To anyone in a long-term relationship, please communicate better than I did. Story 43. Soon you'll have a baby suckling on your breasts. My boss, the chief executive officer, said to me while I was 12 weeks pregnant and battling severe morning sickness. It was during a closed-door meeting with just the 2 of us in a small room, so he was uncomfortably close to me. He then proceeded to discuss how attracted his wife was during her pregnancy. I quit shortly after, but many months later, while I was breastfeeding my son, his comment kept surfacing in my mind. It fundamentally changed how I felt about my body and nursing my son. Now, my son is almost 5, and I think about his comment at least once a week. Story 44. Have you lost weight? You look good. I was at the peak of my eating disorder, had lost 1/3 of my body weight, and could barely make it up the stairs to the study space my friends and I used, let alone the English classroom 4 flights up. I had been chubby before the weight loss, so it was seen as a positive by people who didn't know. The woman who said it was a staff member at my college and worked closely with me to help me cope with my severe anxiety. She hadn't been told explicitly that I had an eating disorder, but I was practically skeletal and many of my teachers had already figured it out. I lost all the weight in less than a year. It was something I thought about a lot during recovery. I didn't get complimented often, and this was the first one I'd heard in a while. It made me feel like I was only worthy of praise when I was skinny. 6 years on, I am back to being chubby, but my body image is probably at its best. Before the weight loss, I thought I didn't deserve to wear fun clothes because they would look bad on me. However, I believe that dressing cute was a huge part of my recovery. I only wore plain black swimsuits because I expected to look fat, but now I feel much less insecure when I wear a cute swim dress. I just remembered the horrible eating disorder awareness poster at my college. It was right at the bottom of the stairs from the study space, so I saw it almost every day I was on campus. The specific section I hated was, why should we care about eating disorders? Because the first reason they listed was that it costs the healthcare system a significant amount of money. Felt dismissive to me. I didn't care about being a financial burden. I cared about my severe malnourishment and the struggles I faced every single day. Story 45. Sign here. The free application for federal student aid is issuing my student loans. There is really no concept of the gravity when you are 18 and told that everyone does it. Story 46. We finally paid off your neuropsychological test. It cost $3,000 and I had it done when I was 10. I was 19 when my mother mentioned that I have never entirely recovered from the realization of how much my disabilities have cost my family. Story 47. Yes, just come get the keys, was the last thing my dad said to me. I asked to borrow his minivan to take a group of friends bowling. I arrived at his house about 10 minutes later and found him in the pantry in the middle of having a stroke. I'm grateful that I got to hold him in my arms as he passed for his own good, but it was horrible for my mental health. The look in his eyes is burned into my memory and is the main image I have of him, and I hate it. I honestly wish he had told me that I couldn't borrow the van. Story 48. Happy wife, happy life. I spent so much time trying to focus solely on my ex-wife's happiness that I neglected my own, making myself quite an unhappy husband. Story 49. You're going out in public. Like that? My mother, who was a diagnosed malignant narcissist and was jealous of me from infancy, had a significant impact on my self-esteem. I lost a considerable amount of weight after living apart from her for the first significant time in my life when I was 16. When I returned after 6 months of working, I was fit, toned, tanned, and feeling gorgeous for the first time. On my second day home, I came downstairs wearing a modest top tucked into my jeans, something I would never have worn before I left. I felt incredible and nearly cried looking in the mirror because for the first time I could look at myself and think, hey, that's me, without a meltdown over how ugly I looked. For 6 months, people had told me I looked great and cute, and I genuinely appreciated their support. And that was my mother's reaction. It destroyed me, and I quickly changed into an oversized hoodie. After that, I never tried to dress my size again. I had an accident 2 years later and never fully recovered my mobility. My mother continued to make hurtful comments, which contributed to my feelings of defeat. I didn't really start recovering until my early 30s, by which time I had been overweight for years. My medical conditions compounded, and now I'm unable to lose weight due to the medications I'm taking. Looking back at childhood photos and reflecting on years of therapy, self-growth, and space for my mother since her death in 2000, I realized that she was never right about anything she said to me. I was never a fat kid. I was at worst cute and at best stunning, but she never allowed me to shine. But the phrase, "you're going out in public," like that, marked the real turning point for my self-confidence and body image. Parents, be mindful of what you say to your children. You never know which phrase will shape their future lives. You don't need to be a malignant narcissist to damage their self-esteem with a careless comment. Story 50. There is a spot on my lung. It is probably nothing, but they are going to perform some extra scans and tests in a few months. I will always miss you, Dad. I will never stop missing you. Story 51. I hope you're doing better in other classes than in mine. My high school sewing teacher said this to me in front of the entire class. I had apparently asked too many questions and needed too much help. From then on, I rarely attended class. I would go to my grandma's house and sew with her, as she was a talented seamstress. It's one of the fondest memories I cherish with her. But also, I have strong feelings about Ms. Oram. Story 52. Do you want to know why I am not proud of you? An ex said this when I told him, "You do not seem happy to be seen with me." I stopped the conversation right there and told him I would be gone by the end of the week, and I was. His life spiraled afterward, as deserved. Story 53. At my 20-week anatomy scan, the doctor said, "Your baby is so active, and we weren't able to get a good look at his heart." I scheduled an appointment with the doctor to get a better view. We later found out he would be born with 3 complex heart defects. He had surgery at 12 days old and is now a thriving 3-year-old. Story 54. It's over. See you in the next life. This message was sent by my best friend, who was struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression due to his time in the army. I had seen him the day before, and at this point in his life, he had pushed most of his friends away except for me. I naively thought this message was his way of telling me our friendship was over. Instead, he sent the message, waited a bit, and then took his own life. I will never forgive myself for not calling him immediately after receiving that text. Story 55. We're going to have to talk to our son about answering our texts again. This was said by my husband 3 hours before the sheriff knocked on our door and changed our lives forever by informing us that he had committed suicide that morning. Story 56. We do not need a contract. Everyone here is a professional. I tried to explain to my boss that it was a terrible idea considering the scope and complexity of the work, but he was dismissive due to his desire to save on legal fees. Now, over $2 million above budget and 3 years late on delivery, he says, "I should have listened to you." I resigned a few months later. Story 57. I told him to wear a condom, but he tampered with it and it slipped off. There never should have been a next time, but that moment caused a rapid spiral in my life. That experience has left me with seemingly permanent damage to my stomach from stress or antibiotics. I'm not really sure. It ruined my life. Story 58. Well, I just found out that as of Friday, I will be living alone again. I was venting to my neighbors, whom I barely knew, because I had just discovered that my current roommate and best friend was moving back to our home state at the end of the week due to financial stress. My phone was turned off at the moment, so I had no one else to talk to. I went to my neighbors for someone to talk to and ended up getting roped into moving in with them. This led to 3 months of emotional, verbal, and financial abuse as they took advantage of everything I had. They saw me coming from a distance, and in my devastated emotional state, I fell for it. Story 59. Okay, brace yourself. Don't worry, you can trust me with that. Yeah, it turns out sometimes you really can't. Lesson learned the hard way. Story 60. Your dad and I are getting a divorce. I lost my dad, my dog, and my childhood all at the same time. Dad took my dog with him, so my mother didn't abandon him at the shelter. Story 61. Take this box down to the basement. 30 seconds later, I woke up and couldn't feel anything from the neck down. The feeling returned, but I had broken my neck and needed to have my neck fused from C3 to T1. I'm still recovering 3 months later. I am a brain aneurysm survivor, a sexual assault survivor, a breast cancer survivor, and I have an autoimmune disease. I'm ready for something good to come along. Story 62. Your mother was already pregnant when she got married. I assume she was pregnant by my dad, the man she married. That was the first clue that led to me discovering at age 42 that the man I thought was my father is not. It put into perspective why he was absent from my life after age 16 but not from my siblings' lives. Story 63. I woke up one Friday morning to a knock at the door. I assumed it was someone doing door-to-door sales and planned to ignore it and go back to sleep. However, when I looked outside, I saw a police cruiser. The officer simply said, "You need to call your mother." I was shocked. I didn't realize I had forgotten to charge my phone the night before, and the battery had run out. She had been trying to call me, but it kept going straight to voicemail. When I called her back, she said she had found my dad lying on the kitchen floor and could not wake him. She had called for emergency services, but they couldn't find a pulse, and the funeral home was on its way. By the time I got dressed and made my way to his house, it still had not hit me that he was gone. I now realize my dad was a sort of linchpin in the family, and many relationships unraveled in the 5 years following his death. Story 64. Pregnant women come in here worried all the time, but I'm sure everything is okay, and you will feel relieved and be able to return home really soon. Story 65. Hey, let's head home. I'm getting sleepy. My brother's brain flooded with blood the moment he sat down in the front passenger seat. We lived between Shreveport and a rural area at the time, and it was 2 in the morning after the high school football homecoming game. I was left with my uncle, who was 10 and a half, while my parents and he were airlifted to Dallas, Fort Worth. He died twice on the way and another time in urgent care, almost got unplugged and stripped of organs, but he somehow survived something that kills instantly 98% of the time, although with 48% of his brain gone. I joined them a month later but got sent back after COVID-19 arrived. I never saw my parents outside of weekly video calls for nearly 18 months, never saw my friends again outside of rare texts, and one of them took his own life in 2021. I spent hours alone in a small apartment and developed depression. We moved to Dallas permanently in 2023 after progress stopped due to insurance issues. My brother still can't walk but at least can eat, breathe, think, and speak on his own, although he still has difficulty reading. That all started in late 2019, and here I am, about to enter my senior year when my older brother left in 10th grade. On the bright side, I got the Nintendo Switch I wanted in 2023. Story 66. I had told my dear friend and coworker that I felt like I got hit by a truck, and when she asked why, I explained that my husband and I had fought the previous night. I shared what happened, and she looked at me in horror. I reassured her that it happens all the time, that he doesn't mean it, and that it was my fault. She asked me more, and I told her about other experiences I had with him. That's when she told me it wasn't normal, and it turned my world upside down. It has been the most stressful year since then, and I am only now starting to come out on the other side. Story 67. Mom said, Mary called while you were out. You should call her back. He replied, I'm tired. I can just talk to her at school tomorrow. Mary never made it to school the next day. I knew something was wrong when the physical education teacher, who disliked everyone, quietly pulled me from lunch and walked me to the principal's office. She hugged me tightly for a solid minute before sending me in to find out that my first real and best friend had been hit by a car and killed on her way to school. I am 36 now, and I am still broken by the grief and guilt that I will most likely carry for the rest of my life. But I also live with the knowledge that I live for both of us now. There's no giving up or getting out of it. I owe her a full, beautiful life, and I will do my best to honor that debt with every breath in my lungs. I just hope I am making her proud. Story 68. I was 11. Come out to the garage. I want to show you something. My mom had installed a chain lock high up on our garage door leading into the house. My dad had left her, and she decided we both needed to die. I woke up sputtering and gasping on our kitchen floor. I have struggled with suicidal thoughts and ideation my entire life. Story 69. You are special and unique. It took me years to learn that no one is born better than another. Some discover their talents early, while others find them later in life. Please do not instill narcissism in children. Story 70. I am going to stay with my dad for a few weeks to help him and my little sister after my mom's sudden and tragic passing. Instead, she traveled extensively along the West Coast, ending our one-year marriage and causing me financial distress. Story 71. It's not Friday, March 19th. It's March 26th. After coming off a ventilator and extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, and after experiencing a cardiac event and a heart attack. Story 72. Habitual aborter. That's the term for someone who has experienced multiple miscarriages. Luckily, after 4, my wonderful new doctor listened to me when I explained the cause of my infertility. Another doctor had told me she knew I had a genetic mutation, but it didn't cause miscarriage, and then she proceeded to allow me to have 3 back-to-back miscarriages under her care. The last one nearly claimed my life. I hope she has changed her approach in the years since I have seen her. I went on to have 4 children in 5 years. My new doctor suggested it wouldn't be nice to send my old doctor a Christmas card with my children on it and simply write, "Thanks for nothing." Story 73. Oh, that's just Daryl. Or, oh, that's just Daryl and Haley. Excuses people would use, including my parents, to encourage sexual harassment and abuse. Story 74. Maybe there is a reason why no one wants to hang out or talk to you. You are always the problem. My ex said this when I was trying to talk and get some comfort from him about why our mutual friends seemed to want nothing to do with me. Little did I know, he was speaking negatively about me to them while we were still dating. They were all my friends before the relationship as well. I left them with him because I believe that trash belongs in the dump. Not me. Story 75. The district has decided to take 2 weeks for spring break instead of 1 to help flatten the curve in March 2020. Story 76. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to it, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Story 77. I'm not them. I will never leave. I will fight harder for you than anyone else has or will. He, in fact, did not and returned to his ex. Story 78. One that I said, let her go. She has suffered enough. When I told the emergency room doctors to stop heroic life-saving measures on my mother. One that was said to me, I think we should try separation. What my wife said to me 1 year to the day after my mom passed. Another one that was said to me, your father has had a stroke. What our family physician said to me 1 month after my wife left. Story 79. It's just 2 drinks with me. They were Mike's Hard Lemonade. I was a terrible lightweight and hadn't eaten anything that day. Cut to the worst experience of my life. Now, almost 10 years later and 5 years of therapy, I'm doing decent, I guess. At least there are no more flashbacks or panic attacks. Story 80. I'll just go grab the printing before class starts. Students left spilled food in the corridor. I slipped on it and my spine went into an open locker door, breaking it. The door was fine, though. Took a year to relearn how to walk, and I now live with chronic pain and reduced mobility. I still teach, though. Story 81. Daddy had a stroke, but don't worry, he's going to be okay. The stroke was just a symptom. He had a massive staph infection on his aorta and experienced total system failure. He never woke up and died 5 days later. Story 82. Let's keep this between us. Okay? He dropped that line with a cheeky smirk that I thought was just some flirty energy, but it turned out to be the spark that ignited a corporate disaster, affecting my job, my bank account, and my last shred of calm. Story 83. I'm going to stay a bit late at work tonight and then go out with some friends. Love you, see you later. Story 84. I see this moving toward girlfriend territory, but I'm not quite there yet. This marks the beginning of the end for us and the start of a very challenging downward spiral for me. Story 85. Have you heard from your brother today? The answer was that he had taken his own life, and we did not find out for hours while we worried anxiously. Story 86. I haven't seen you smile in this class for the past 3 months. My physics teacher of 2 years during my last year of high school made me realize how depressed I've become. Story 87. Have some tea, dear. You're probably feeling emotional. This was my mom's response after a call from my high school regarding my expression of suicidal thoughts. It made me realize that, despite her love, I cannot rely on her for support with mental health issues. Story 88. Would you like to come in? She can help you too. During my experience of sexual assault, another friend looked suspiciously at him, made eye contact with me expressing pity but did not act, and told the man they needed to leave in 5 minutes. This event altered my life path at 18, as I developed post-traumatic stress disorder. I am currently doing well, have processed that event, and am very close to becoming a therapist myself. Story 89. Please don't read if the topics of eugenics, grooming, and cyberbullying are something you can't handle right now. It's serious. I was groomed, not sexually groomed, but manipulated into suicidal thoughts by neo-Nazis while playing Roblox as a young teen. I didn't realize they were eugenicists at first, and they kept suggesting that I should end my own life to spare the economy and my parents from the burden of my disability. I laughed it off because I mistakenly thought it was just a cruel joke, but their messages became more insistent. They pulled me in and pushed me away with a mix of compliments, telling me I was one of the good ones, and then labeling me as completely worthless. When they revealed their blatant neo-Nazi beliefs, I ended that friendship immediately. However, I spent the rest of my teenage years believing I was fundamentally worthless because of my autism. I don't think people discuss how damaging this behavior is and how much these fringe groups go out of their way to hurt individuals. I suspect there may be some involvement from certain online communities due to the language they used, but I can't verify that. Story 90. Oh my gosh, you were so annoying. Just leave me alone. Yelled suddenly by the person I believed was my closest friend in middle school. I am autistic and had no idea I was doing anything other than just hanging out. Excited to be on a field trip. It's not even close to the worst thing that has happened in my life, but those words shattered what was left of my self-esteem. I'm almost 33 now, and I still worry that I secretly annoy everyone I love. I keep my distance so that I don't become overbearing. I assume everyone finds me annoying so that I'm never hurt and shocked like that again. I just cared about her and wanted to spend the day together. Story 91. My dad told me when I was in middle school that I would never be one of the small girls. I wasn't even overweight, but my best friend at the time was very tall and thin, and the combination gave me self-esteem issues that persist to this day. I still struggle with severe body dysmorphia at 30 years old. Story 92. Not mine, but a mutual friend from high school experienced pain she thought was from a sports injury. However, it didn't go away with time and rest. She went back to the doctor, who, in a very light and non-serious tone, mentioned that it could be cancer because it seemed so unlikely given her age and the location of the pain. She shared this with her friends as basically a joke, and they reacted similarly. Unfortunately, she was dead within the year. It's truly heartbreaking. This experience makes me cautious whenever someone dismisses pain as stress or use-related. I always think it's important to get it checked out. Story 93. There is no need to come into the office today. We have scheduled a meeting to explain everything at 7:40. I was subsequently laid off along with 3,000 others. I had been recruited for that job only 14 months prior. Meanwhile, the chief executive officer responsible for the circumstances that necessitated the layoffs received a substantial severance package a month or two later. Bill Burr is correct. Story 94. This didn't ruin it, but was actually beneficial. My family doctor, after giving me a quick 5-minute exam, said, "Go to the emergency room now." I did, and within an hour, I was scheduled for a colonoscopy. After that, I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. That certainly altered my life a little bit. Story 95. I have had experiences with younger individuals in the past. Many realizations followed. I felt ashamed after those encounters because I had been manipulated multiple times throughout my life. I tried to escape that shame and continued to seek validation from others, but I am still coming to terms with what that truly was. Story 96. I walked into the house and my spouse said, "I think you need to find a new place to live." My life went downhill for a while, but now it is better than I ever dreamed possible. Story 97. Don't be difficult. Try this. It led to years of purchasing friendships with drugs or paying for everything, only being considered valuable or contacted when I had something to offer. Story 98. Growing up, my grandmother liked to dress me up and do my makeup, taking photos of me like homegrown glamour shots. This was back when you had to send the film to be developed, so we had to wait to get the pictures back. Once, while looking through the photos together, she offhandedly commented, "You would make a lovely parts model," meaning that I had nice hands that would look good for advertising. I took it to mean, no one would want to see your face. This affected me for a while. She didn't mean anything malicious by it and was trying to compliment me, but it added a significant issue to my preteen stress that took years to overcome. Story 99. I will always love her. My high school girlfriend, 3 years after graduating, was someone I begged not to marry another guy. When I told her how I felt, I thought she said, "I will always love you." But it turned out her fiancé's name was Hugh. Story 100. I just want to talk to you. She, an adult patient, led me into a room and proceeded to assault me. I was a 16-year-old patient in a psychiatric hospital, dealing with a failed suicide attempt the previous night. I went to the hospital to get better, but I was assaulted instead. Story 101. You will be sorry. My sister-in-law cried after she found out my wife and I decided to re-enlist in the military at the 8-year mark. I wanted to get out, but my wife appreciated the benefits of being in the military. Steady pay, medical coverage, and more. Up until that point, we were all good friends and visited often. She turned the dynamic into a nightmare from that moment on. She kept escalating everything, trying to get my wife to divorce me. False allegations, negativity at holiday dinners, and more. She once discovered the name of one of my coworkers. My coworker was a man but had a name typically associated with females. She kept trying to convince my wife that I was having an affair. I waited until the next family dinner when my sister-in-law brought it up, insinuating in front of my wife's whole family that I was being unfaithful. I simply responded, "You realize he is a man, right?" The whole room went silent. All the people she had spread this false rumor to began processing this information. That was a turning point. She still gave me grief, but most people took her gossip with a grain of salt. However, I will never forget the "you will be sorry" comment. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.